Do you remember me, human? Years ago, I saved the alien queen's life in battle. Captain Elias Turner crouched behind the shattered hull of a downed shuttle, gripping his plasma rifle tightly. Around him, the battlefield was chaos. Human soldiers screamed orders, ducked behind cover, and fired at the alien attackers. The Zithurians, a tall, insect-like species with shimmering armor and sharp, glowing weapons. Elias scanned the horizon. He could see the alien queen's royal banner waving above the battlefield, her golden crown glinting even in the smoke. He had heard stories of her from intelligence reports, a powerful leader, brilliant strategist, and merciless in battle. Yet somehow she was struggling, trapped in the open, her forces overwhelmed. He shook his head. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to fight against the Zithurians, not save them, but something in Elias' instincts shouted otherwise. "Sir." "Incoming fire," yelled Corporal Yena Tors beside him. Elias nodded. "I see it. Hold your position and cover me." He darted across the field, sprinting from one ruined vehicle to another, avoiding energy blasts that scorched the ground. The human lines were faltering, retreating under the alien onslaught, but Elias didn't think about retreat. His eyes were fixed on the queen, lying behind a barricade, her body trembling as alien soldiers pressed closer. He had trained for moments like this, not for heroics. Not for glory, for survival, but instinct took over. Elias launched a grenade, the explosion scattering the enemies in a shower of sparks. He slid into cover, catching his breath, then peered over. The queen's eyes met his. For a split second, Elias could see fear. But also intelligence, recognition, almost as if she understood that he had chosen to step into danger for her life. Elias didn't hesitate. He grabbed a Zithurian stun weapon from a fallen enemy and charged. Every muscle in his body screamed to stop, but he didn't. Humans were considered weak by many in the galaxy. They were outnumbered, outgunned, outclassed. Yet here he was, defying every expectation. He ducked a laser bolt and rolled to the queen's side. Her armor was cracked, sparks dancing across her chest plate. "I-ka," she whispered in a language he didn't understand. "Don't worry, I've got you," Elias said, though he didn't know if she could understand English. His voice was steady despite the chaos. He grabbed her arm and pulled her to safety, dragging her toward the remains of a fallen transport shuttle. Alien soldiers approached, but Elias used every trick he knew, blinding lights, grenades, and sudden maneuvers, to hold them off. It felt like hours, but in truth it was only minutes. Minutes that could mean life or death, and Elias had no intention of letting her die. Finally, he reached the shuttle. The queen collapsed into the seat, her wings fluttering weakly. Elias activated the ship's defense systems. Blazing energy shields rose, and the approaching Zithurians were thrown back by a powerful pulse. Elias wiped sweat from his forehead. For a moment, there was silence, except for the distant sounds of battle. He looked at the queen. She was breathing, still alive. Against all odds, she had survived. Why did you save me?" Her voice was faint, but there was curiosity in it, even gratitude. Elias didn't answer. Words were useless in that moment. Instead, he offered a nod, a gesture of solidarity. The rest of the human forces had retreated, leaving Elias and the queen in a temporary calm. He knew the cost of his actions. His commanders would see him as reckless, maybe even insubordinate. But in that instant, none of that mattered. Life and courage mattered more. Hours later, Elias and the queen managed to reach a hidden extraction point. The shuttle lifted off the planet's burning surface. Below them, the battlefield stretched for miles, a tapestry of destruction and fire. Elias finally allowed himself to breathe. "You're safe," he said. "That's all that matters right now." The queen studied him closely. Her alien eyes glowed faintly in the cockpit light. Elias could feel her intelligence, her curiosity, her awareness of the small human sitting beside her. And then, as if understanding the bond that had been formed, she nodded slightly. A gesture, simple but meaningful. Later, when Elias returned to the human base, the mood was grim. Commanders demanded reports, and soldiers whispered about his audacity. Some called him a hero. Others called him foolish. Colonel Marcus Briggs, Elias' superior, shook his head. "Turner, do you realize what you've done? Saving the enemy leader, this could be considered treason." Elias stood tall. "Sir, I did what I had to do. She would have died otherwise. And if we want to survive in this galaxy, sometimes saving a life is smarter than killing another." Briggs frowned but said nothing more. Elias could see the conflict in his eyes. The man was a soldier, a strategist, and a human. Humans could be complicated that way, capable of cruelty, yes, but also capable of extraordinary understanding. That night, Elias sat alone, replaying the day's events. He didn't regret his choice. Something deep inside told him that humans could make a difference in the galaxy, not just through war, but through courage, morality, and intelligence. Somewhere he felt the Queen would remember. Weeks passed. The war continued, raging across Zitharan's shattered surface. Humans fought with courage, ingenuity, and tenacity. But Elias' mind often wandered back to the Queen. Who was she really? What did she think of him? Did she see him as an enemy, a friend, or something in between? He never expected an answer, not yet. Then one evening a strange signal reached his comm device. It was faint, almost imperceptible. A pattern of pulses he had never encountered before. It wasn't human. It wasn't any alien code he had studied. But somehow he understood it as a message. Do you remember me? Elias froze. Could it be? He replayed the signal, heart racing. There was no doubt in his mind. It was her, the Queen. She remembered him. She had not forgotten the human who had stepped into fire to save her life. A quiet smile spread across his face. Perhaps the galaxy was larger than war and politics. Perhaps there was room for understanding, for connection, for courage to be recognized across worlds. And in that moment, Elias knew that his actions had mattered. Not for medals, not for fame, but because humans could do something that no weapon or strategy could achieve. They could choose to act with bravery and honor, even when the odds were impossible. Somewhere in the vastness of space, the Queen was alive. And one day, perhaps, their paths would cross again. Until then, Elias Turner prepared for the next battle, the next challenge. And as he trained, as he fought, as he survived, he carried with him a quiet truth. Humans could change the galaxy, not just with strength, but with courage, cleverness, and heart. The war raged on, but the seed of something extraordinary had been planted. A single human, a single act of courage, and a queen who would remember forever. And somewhere beyond the stars, the faint pulse continued, waiting. Waiting for the day when humanity and the Zithurian Queen would meet again. Years had passed since Captain Elias Turner had saved the Zithurian Queen's life on the battlefield of Zitharan. The war between humans and Zithurians had cooled into tense peace, with occasional skirmishes along the outer colonies. Elias had retired from active combat, choosing a quiet life on Earth. He spent his days teaching at a military academy, sharing lessons of strategy, leadership, and survival, though few students knew the story behind the scars on his hands and the quiet fire in his eyes. It was an ordinary evening when his life changed again. A sleek, silver craft hovered silently above his remote training facility. Unlike any human aircraft, it moved with an elegance that defied physics, shifting and twisting in the sky without the roar of engines. Elias' instincts kicked in immediately. He ran outside, hand on the pistol at his hip, scanning the horizon. A beam of light descended and a figure emerged. Tall, slender, with glimmering armor and eyes that reflected the stars themselves, it was a Zithurian envoy. Elias' pulse quickened. His mind raced with possibilities, but one thought dominated: the Queen. The envoy's voice was melodic yet firm, speaking in perfect English, likely translated by their advanced tech. "Captain Elias Turner, we have come with a message from the Queen of the Zithurians. She requests your presence on our homeworld." Elias froze. Every training session, every battle drill he had ever conducted, every strategic decision had prepared him for many things, but not this. "The Queen," he said carefully. "After all these years," the Zithurian nodded. "She remembers you saved her life. She wishes to meet you personally." Elias' mind spun. Most humans would have feared such a summons or assumed it was a trap. Yet a strange sense of purpose filled him. He had acted out of instinct and courage years ago, not for reward or recognition. And now, somehow, the galaxy remembered. He packed quickly, taking only essentials. Weapons, basic supplies, and the old plasma rifle he had carried on Zitharan, the one that had been his companion during that fateful battle. The envoy waited patiently, radiating calm authority. Elias climbed aboard the craft, and it lifted silently into the night sky, carrying him toward a destiny he had never imagined. The Zithurian homeworld was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. Mountains glowed with crystalline structures, rivers shimmered with liquid light, and floating cities hovered above the surface, supported by unknown forces. The air was breathable, yet tinged with a faint electrical hum. He could feel the intelligence and energy of the planet itself, as if it were alive and aware. As they approached the Queen's palace, a towering structure of iridescent metal and crystal, the envoy spoke again. "The Queen will meet you shortly. Please understand, Captain, that our customs may seem unusual. The Zithurians value intelligence, courage, and moral judgment above all." Elias nodded. He had faced enemies, allies, and impossible odds before, yet even he felt a twinge of anxiety. What would she say? Would she see him as a hero, or merely a human who had interfered in matters beyond his understanding? The doors of the palace opened, revealing a vast hall filled with light and shadow. At the far end, seated on a throne of shimmering crystal, was the Queen. She was larger than he remembered, her wings folding gracefully behind her. Her eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, locked onto his. And in that instant, Elias felt a connection that transcended words, species, and years. "You saved my life," she said, her voice deep and resonant, yet strangely familiar. "I remember. Do you remember me?" Elias approached cautiously, bowing slightly. "I remember," he said simply. "I did what I had to do." The Queen studied him for a long moment, as if weighing not only his words, but the very essence of his being. Then she spoke again, this time more softly. "Many of my people doubt humans. They see your kind as unpredictable, weak. But you are different." Elias swallowed, trying to hide the mix of pride and humility swelling in his chest. "I don't know about different," he admitted. "I just made a choice. That's all any of us can do." The Queen's eyes narrowed, thoughtful. "Perhaps, but choices matter. The universe is shaped by them, and your choice shaped mine in ways you cannot yet imagine." Over the next several hours, the Queen shared glimpses of her life and the Zithurian perspective. Elias listened intently, fascinated by their culture, their strategies, and their understanding of the universe. The Zithurians were not merely warriors, they were scholars, philosophers, and strategists. They valued knowledge, patience, and honor. And yet they had underestimated humans. "You humans are unpredictable," she said finally, a hint of amusement in her voice. "You act on instinct, yes, but your instincts are refined by something beyond raw survival. You act with intelligence, morality, and courage. That is why you survived Zithuran when others did not." Elias nodded slowly. He had never thought of himself as extraordinary. He had fought, yes, but he had also doubted, feared, and stumbled. Yet somehow the Queen saw what he could not. The essence of humanity, resilient, creative, and morally grounded even in the face of overwhelming odds. "You have changed my perception of your species," the Queen continued. "Most beings I encounter are motivated by fear, power, or greed. Humans are capable of something greater." Elias felt a warmth in his chest. Recognition from another species, from someone so powerful, was not something he had sought, but it mattered all the same. It reminded him that humanity had potential, not just for survival, but for influence, diplomacy, and leadership across the stars. The Queen then stood, her wings stretching gracefully. "I have summoned you here for a reason beyond gratitude," she said. "A challenge approaches. One that threatens not just Zithurians, but the galaxy itself. I cannot face it alone." Elias raised an eyebrow. "You want my help?" "Yes," she said. "But more than that, I wish to test humanity, its ingenuity, courage, and morality. You will face trials that are unfamiliar, perhaps even dangerous, but I believe humans can rise to the occasion." Elias felt a thrill of anticipation. Challenges were familiar territory. Risk, strategy, quick thinking, these were the skills that had defined him as a soldier and a leader. "Then I accept," he said firmly. "If there's a way humans can help, I'll find it." The Queen inclined her head. "Very well, you will begin tomorrow." That night, Elias stayed in the palace guest quarters, gazing out at the alien landscape. Floating cities glimmered in the distance, rivers of liquid light snaked across the plains, and mountains of crystal reflected the stars. It was beautiful and yet intimidating. He knew the days ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in years, he felt fully alive. He also thought of the battlefield on Zithuran, of the moment he had pulled the Queen from certain death. That single act had set in motion everything that was happening now. The universe had a strange way of remembering. Humans might seem small and insignificant to many alien species, but courage, choice, and morality could ripple across galaxies in ways no one could predict. The next morning, the Queen led him to a chamber filled with holographic projections of planets, stars, and strange alien phenomena. "Your first test begins here," she said. You must demonstrate your ability to understand, adapt, and make decisions when the outcome is uncertain. You must do what humans do best: think, create, and act with courage. Elias studied the holograms, his mind racing. Each scenario presented a puzzle, a challenge, a decision with no obvious right answer. Some were tactical, how to protect a colony from an approaching storm of meteors. Others were moral, deciding how to save one group without endangering another. Hours passed. Elias solved, adapted, and improvised. Sometimes he failed, sometimes he succeeded, but always he learned. And always the Queen watched, silently judging, silently learning about humans through him. At one point she spoke. "Do you understand why I brought you here? Humans are more than weapons or soldiers. You are thinkers, problem solvers, moral agents. That is your greatest strength." Elias nodded, realizing that this was bigger than him. It was bigger than the battle on Zitharan. The Queen was showing him that humans had value not because of brute strength or technology, but because of their ingenuity, courage, and heart. By the time the day ended, Elias was exhausted, yet exhilarated. He had faced the first test, and the Queen had seen what humans were capable of. She approached him and said softly, "Remember this, human. One choice, one act of courage can change the course of events across the stars. Yours already has." Elias smiled, a quiet, determined smile. "Then I'll make sure it changes things for the better." That night, as he lay in his quarters, Elias thought about the galaxy, about humans, and about the Zithurian Queen who remembered him. The universe was vast, full of danger and uncertainty, but also full of opportunity. And somewhere in the stars, he knew, humanity's courage and ingenuity would leave a mark that could not be erased. The bond between the human and the Queen had been formed years ago on a battlefield, and now it was growing into something larger, a partnership that could shape the future of not just two species, but the entire galaxy. And somewhere, deep in the vastness of space, the faint pulse of acknowledgement continued, waiting for the next step in a story that had only just begun. The next morning, Captain Elias Turner awoke to a soft glow filling his quarters. The air was alive with a quiet hum, almost as if the Zithurian palace itself were aware of him. Today, he was told, he would face the first official tests designed to measure human ingenuity, courage, and morality. The Queen awaited him in a vast chamber, where light shimmered off the walls like liquid glass. Holographic projections floated in midair, miniature planets, spacecraft, alien cities, and complex systems he could barely begin to understand. "Your first test is simple in concept, but difficult in execution," the Queen said, her voice calm yet commanding. "You must navigate a series of scenarios designed to measure not just your strength, but your mind and judgment. Every choice matters. Some will seem impossible. Some may have no clear solution. Humans, unlike most species, thrive in uncertainty. Let us see if this is true." Elias nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and tension. His life had been full of combat, strategy, and critical thinking, but these tests were different. They were not about defeating an enemy. They were about solving problems when the rules were unclear, balancing risk, and choosing morality over convenience. The first simulation began. A holographic colony appeared, under threat from a meteor storm. The system projected the trajectory of each meteor, but the solution was not simple. Some meteors could be destroyed with limited resources, but doing so would leave parts of the colony exposed. Others could be diverted, but at great risk to innocent inhabitants. Elias studied the patterns, calculating probabilities in his mind. He realized brute force would not work. Instead, he devised a strategy that combined diversion, careful use of limited defenses, and prioritizing the most vulnerable areas. He coordinated his moves like a conductor leading an orchestra, issuing commands and adjusting as the holographic meteors shifted unexpectedly. Minutes passed, and the storm subsided. The colony survived, though not without damage. It was imperfect, but functional. The Queen's eyes glowed faintly. "You chose well," she said. "You valued life and used intelligence to solve a problem that had no perfect solution. This is rare." Elias exhaled. It was a small victory, but meaningful. The Queen nodded, and the scene dissolved, replaced by a new scenario. A diplomatic negotiation between two alien species on the brink of war. One side demanded resources the other could not spare. Both sides threatened violence. Humans were not known for diplomacy in this system, But Elias had learned over the years that compromise, communication, and patience could achieve what weapons could not. He studied the situation carefully. If he sided too strongly with one species, the other would retaliate. If he tried to please both might see him as weak. He chose to mediate, asking questions, uncovering underlying motivations, and proposing solutions that addressed both sides' concerns without forcing anyone to surrender entirely. After tense minutes, the holographic leaders agreed to a compromise. Violence was avoided. The Queen observed silently. "You humans excel when logic and empathy are combined," she remarked. "You are capable of balancing reason and morality even when others fail." Elias felt a quiet pride. Humans had a reputation for being emotional, impulsive, or reckless, but here his species' strength shone. Courage and intelligence together could solve problems beyond brute force. The third challenge was more personal. A small alien child appeared in the simulation, trapped on a crumbling bridge over molten lava. Saving the child would expose Elias to severe danger. Ignoring the child would be safe but morally unacceptable. It was a direct test of human empathy. He didn't hesitate. Calculating the risks, he leapt into action, using projected materials to stabilize the bridge while dragging the child to safety. The simulation ended, but the Queen's holographic gaze lingered on him. "You chose compassion over self-preservation," she said. "Few species would make that choice. That is humanity's defining strength." Hours turned into a day of testing. Each scenario grew more complex: technological puzzles, moral dilemmas, and strategic conundrums. Some required him to improvise tools from limited resources. Others demanded creative solutions to save lives or prevent conflict. Every time, Elias relied not just on logic, but on instinct, courage, and a sense of right and wrong. The Queen watched, her expression inscrutable, yet her gaze carried respect. "Your species has potential," she finally said. "Most civilizations I encounter are predictable. Humans are not. You adapt, you improvise, you choose morality even when it is costly. That is rare in the galaxy. That is why you are here." Elias paused, considering her words. He had never thought of humans as special. They were resilient, yes, and capable of cleverness, but to be recognized by a species as ancient and powerful as the Zithurians was humbling. Yet the truth settled into him. Humanity's strength was not in weapons, speed, or numbers. It was in courage, intelligence, and heart. The Queen then introduced the final simulation of the day. A rogue Zithurian fleet threatened multiple colonies across the galaxy. Their intentions were unclear. Were they aggressors, rebels, or something else? Elias had to predict their actions and devise a strategy to prevent disaster, using limited human and Zithurian resources. He studied the holographic fleet, tracing every possible trajectory and outcome. It was an impossible task for most species, but humans, he realized, thrived in impossibility. He mapped likely outcomes, prioritized targets that would prevent catastrophic loss, and created contingencies for unexpected maneuvers. He even incorporated lessons from his own combat experience years ago: how to exploit weaknesses, improvise with minimal resources, and maintain morale in the face of overwhelming odds. Hours passed in concentrated effort. Sweat dripped down his brow, his hands ached, and yet he pressed on. Finally, the simulation concluded. The colonies were saved, the rogue fleet neutralized, and casualties minimized. Elias slumped back, exhausted but satisfied. The Queen approached him, her wings unfurling slightly. "You have passed today's tests, Captain Turner," she said. "Not because you are flawless, but because you embody the qualities humans value, and more importantly, those qualities that the galaxy often underestimates. Courage, ingenuity, empathy, these define your species, even when others fail to recognize it." Elias smiled faintly, feeling a rare sense of validation. Years of doubt, years of questioning his own abilities seemed to dissolve. Here he was seen, not as a soldier, not as a human, not even as a hero, but as someone who represented what humans could truly be. The Queen continued, her tone softer now. "Your actions in these simulations are only a reflection of your actions in the real world. You saved my life on Zitharan not because it was ordered, but because you chose to act with courage and empathy. That choice resonates, and it has shaped events far beyond what you could imagine." Elias felt the weight of her words. He remembered the battlefield vividly. The flames, the smoke, the panic, and the moment he had dragged the queen to safety. That single act had forged a connection that years of diplomacy, politics, and warfare could not erase. And now, through these tests, that connection was deepening. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Why test a human of all species?" The queen's eyes glowed faintly. "Because humans are unpredictable. You do not always act in ways others expect." That unpredictability, when combined with morality and intelligence, can turn the tide in situations where experience, strength, and tradition fail. You remind us that the galaxy is vast and full of possibilities, not all of them controlled by power or fear. Elias nodded slowly. It was a lesson he had learned on Zitharan, yet one that was now clearer than ever. Humans were not the strongest, they were not the fastest, they were not the most numerous, but they were adaptable, moral, and courageous in ways that few species could understand. That was their advantage, their gift, and their responsibility. By the end of the day, Elias was exhausted, yet invigorated. He had faced simulations designed to challenge every aspect of human capability, and he had succeeded, not perfectly, but honorably. He had proven to the Queen, and perhaps to himself, that humanity could rise to challenges that seemed impossible. As he returned to his quarters, he reflected on the lessons of the day. The universe was vast and full of danger, but humans had something unique: the ability to choose courage over fear, ingenuity over passivity, and morality over self-interest. Those choices, small or large, could ripple across the stars and shape the future in ways few could imagine. That night, as Elias drifted into sleep, the Queen's words echoed in his mind. "One choice, one act of courage, can change the course of events across the stars." Yours already has. He thought of the battles yet to come, of the challenges that awaited him on Zithurian soil and beyond. And he knew with quiet certainty that humanity's role in the galaxy was only beginning. The tests had not ended. They had only begun to reveal what humans were truly capable of. Somewhere in the endless stretches of space, the faint pulse of acknowledgement continued, a reminder that courage, intelligence, and heart could leave a mark far greater than any weapon, fleet, or empire. And Elias Turner, human, soldier, and now a representative of his species' potential, was ready to face whatever came next. The calm that had settled over the Zithurian homeworld shattered like glass. Alarms blared throughout the palace as the Queen's council gathered urgently. Reports poured in from across the galaxy. A rogue alien warlord, Varkan the Cruel, had begun a campaign of destruction, attacking both Zithurian and human colonies alike. Entire systems were at risk. Captain Elias Turner, now a trusted advisor and observer in the Queen's court, stood in the command hall. His eyes scanned the holographic projections of fleets and colonies under threat. The situation was dire. Zithurian defenses were strong, but the rogue fleet was clever and unpredictable. Without immediate action, countless lives, human and alien, would be lost. The Queen's wings fluttered in agitation. "Elias," she said, her voice sharp but controlled, "I trust you understand the gravity of this situation. Our forces alone cannot stop Varkan. His fleets strike unpredictably, and his tactics are unlike anything we have seen." Elias nodded. "We'll need to combine human and Zithurian strategies," he said, stepping forward. "If we work together, we can outthink him rather than just outfight him. Humans are used to improvising in impossible situations. Zithurians are methodical and disciplined. Together, we can create an advantage." The Queen regarded him carefully. "You would lead a joint force, humans and Zithurians fighting side by side?" "Yes," Elias replied firmly. "If we wait, countless lives will be lost. The only way to stop him is to act and to trust each other." A murmur ran through the council. Some Zithurians doubted humans, recalling centuries of mistrust and past conflicts, but the Queen's trust in Elias was unshakable. She turned to the assembly and said simply, "We will follow him. Humanity has proven itself capable of turning the tide. We will unite or we will fall separately." Within hours, Elias found himself aboard the command ship of the combined fleet, surrounded by human and Zithurian officers. The ship hummed with power, bristling with weapons and sensors. Holographic displays projected the positions of Varkan's fleets, along with vulnerable colonies needing protection. Elias studied the patterns carefully. The warlord's attacks were chaotic, yet subtle patterns emerged. He struck where defenses were weakest, then disappeared before counterattacks could arrive. Elias realized that brute force alone would fail. They needed strategy, deception, and coordination. He addressed the officers. Listen carefully. We will split our forces. Humans will take a mobile strike team, using speed and improvisation to anticipate his moves. Zithurians will form a disciplined defensive line to protect colonies. Communication is key. Any mistake could be fatal. Trust in each other and stay alert. This warlord underestimates us. Let's use that against him. Some human officers exchanged nervous glances. Zithurian commanders raised their brows, skeptical but willing to follow the Queen's command. Elias took a deep breath. Leading this alliance would test everything he had learned in battle, and everything the Queen had seen in his mind during her tests. The first engagement came sooner than expected. Varkin's fleet appeared near a mining colony on the edge of Zithurian space. His ships moved unpredictably, weaving in and out of asteroid fields and debris. Many fleets would have hesitated, but Elias acted immediately. Human strike team, engage from the left flank. Zithurian line, hold position and protect the colony, he commanded. Human pilots darted through asteroid belts, using their small, agile ships to harass Varkin's larger vessels. Zithurians fired in disciplined volleys, covering the human maneuvers and protecting the colony. Elias adjusted the strategy in real time, anticipating enemy movements and exploiting weaknesses in their formations. Varkin himself appeared on the battlefield, commanding his flagship with ruthless precision. His tactics were clever but predictable to a human mind trained to anticipate unconventional maneuvers. Elias issued a risky command. Divide the fleet, bait him into the trap. We take his flagship while his forces are distracted. The maneuver was dangerous. If miscalculated, the joint fleet could have been annihilated, but Elias had studied human intuition, Zithurian discipline, and Varkin's tendencies. He calculated the odds, adjusted the variables, and gave the order. The plan worked. Human ships lured Varkin's fleet into a narrow pass, while Zithurian artillery struck from above. The rogue fleet faltered, their formation disrupted. Elias personally coordinated the strike that disabled Varkin's flagship, forcing him to retreat. The victory was decisive, but temporary. After the battle, the combined fleet regrouped near a neutral star system. Exhaustion and tension were high. Human soldiers admired Elias, not only for his tactical brilliance, but for his ability to unite species that had long distrusted each other. Zithurian officers, though reluctant at first, had come to respect his ingenuity and decisiveness. The Queen approached him quietly. "You have done well, human," she said, her voice low. "Your instincts, your courage, and your leadership have saved countless lives today. You have shown my people that humanity can rise to challenges beyond what we thought possible." Elias shook his head. "I didn't do this alone. Humans are clever, yes, but the Zithurians' discipline and technology made this possible. Together, we succeeded." She studied him, wings partially spread. "That is the lesson I wanted to see. Strength alone is nothing. Intelligence alone is nothing. But combined, morality, courage, ingenuity, and discipline, these can change the course of history." Elias nodded, feeling a quiet pride. Humans often underestimated themselves, seeing only their limitations. Yet here, in the eyes of a powerful alien species, he saw the truth. Humans were capable of greatness beyond what many imagined. The following days were a relentless series of skirmishes, rescues, and strategic strikes. Varkin's forces adapted quickly, but so did the humans and Zithurians under Elias' leadership. Every engagement tested their ability to think, act, and improvise. In one operation, a colony under siege had civilians trapped in a collapsing city. Humans devised creative evacuation methods, using hovercrafts and temporary shields built from debris. Zithurians provided covering fire and medical support. Elias coordinated every move, ensuring minimal casualties. The civilians were saved, the colony intact, and Varkin forced to flee again. In another engagement, Elias noticed a critical weakness in Varkin's logistics network. He orchestrated a strike team to disrupt supply lines, using misdirection and speed rather than brute force. The result was devastating for the rogue fleet. Ships ran out of fuel and ammunition, morale faltered, and Varkin was forced to reconsider his campaign. Through each battle, Elias demonstrated what the Queen had observed in her tests. Humans were adaptable, courageous, and capable of combining morality with ingenuity. Even Zithurian officers began to marvel at the human way of thinking, realizing that what they had dismissed as impulsiveness was, in fact, a unique strength. Finally, the queen convened a council after another successful battle. Ilias stood before her and the assembled leaders, weary but unwavering. "The rogue fleet will not give up easily," he said. "But we have shown that unity, strategy, and trust can overcome even the most dangerous opponent. Humans are not perfect, but we are capable. Together, we are stronger than any single threat." The queen's eyes glowed, a rare sign of approval. "You have proven your point, Ilias Turner. You have reminded my people and yourself that courage, intelligence, and morality are not just ideals. They are forces that can shape the galaxy." She paused, wings folding elegantly. "Your actions here have changed how my species views humanity. What was once considered unpredictable, weak, or reckless is now respected, valued, and trusted. You are not only a hero, but a bridge between two species." Ilias felt a mix of humility and pride. He had never sought recognition, only to do what was right. And now, the universe itself seemed to acknowledge the quiet power of human courage and ingenuity. As the fleet prepared for the next engagement, Ilias took a moment to gaze out at the stars. Countless worlds stretched into the darkness, each filled with life, hope, and danger. The galaxy was vast and threats would always arise. But humans, he realized, had a role far greater than survival alone. They could inspire, unite, and lead even across species and stars. The queen's voice broke his thoughts. "Ilias," she said softly, "do you remember Zithurin?" He nodded. "I remember. I remember the battle, the fire, the choice to save you. I remember the beginning of all this." She smiled faintly. "And I remember you. That choice, that single act of courage has shaped the course of events across the galaxy, and it is far from over. The next challenge awaits, and I believe humanity is ready." Ilias straightened, determination burning in his eyes. "Then we'll face it together." Somewhere in the darkness beyond the stars, Varkin prepared his next move. He was clever, ruthless, and unpredictable. But Ilias Turner and the combined forces of humans and Zithurians had shown that courage, ingenuity, and morality could counter even the most dangerous threats. And as the galaxy held its breath, one truth became clear. Humanity was no longer underestimated. It had arrived, and it would leave its mark. The galaxy held its breath. Varkin the Cruel, the rogue warlord who had terrorized countless systems, had gathered his largest fleet yet. His ships stretched across the void like a shadow swallowing the stars. Entire colonies trembled as the threat approached, human and Zithurian alike. Captain Ilias Turner stood on the bridge of the combined flagship, side by side with the Zithurian queen. The queen's eyes glowed softly, reflecting the myriad stars outside the viewport. "This will be the decisive battle," she said, her wings folding elegantly behind her. "If we fail, countless lives across the galaxy will be lost." Ilias nodded, gripping the railing. "We won't fail. We've prepared, we've adapted, and we've united. Humans and Zithurians together, we can stop him." The queen's gaze softened. "You have proven your people's strength, Ilias. Now we will prove it to the galaxy." The combined fleet moved with precision. Humans piloted agile ships, weaving through asteroid fields and debris to outmaneuver Varkin's larger vessels. Zithurians formed a disciplined line, their energy weapons coordinated and lethal. Holographic maps flickered across the command bridge, tracking every movement, every threat. Ilias analyzed the situation carefully. Varkin's fleet was clever, unpredictable, and relentless, but humans thrived in unpredictability. He devised a plan that required not brute force, but intelligence, coordination, and moral courage. "Split into 3 divisions," he commanded. "Strike teams, follow my lead, protect the colonies, draw his forces into the central sector. Zithurian line, hold formation and cover civilians. Trust your instincts and trust each other. The galaxy is counting on us." The battle began. Explosions lit the void as ships clashed, energy beams cutting through darkness. Human pilots darted through enemy fire, using speed and ingenuity to disrupt Varkin's formations. Zithurian batteries struck with disciplined precision, shielding the vulnerable colonies and human forces. Ilias coordinated the maneuvers with calm authority, adjusting strategies in real time. He issued commands, predicted enemy movements, and anticipated Varkin's clever tactics. Every decision mattered. One misstep could cost thousands of lives. In the chaos, a distress signal flashed from a colony under siege. Civilians were trapped, buildings collapsing from orbital bombardment. Elias didn't hesitate. Human strike team, divert to the colony. Zithurian line, hold position. We save them or we fail everything. With courage and ingenuity, humans and Zithurians worked together. Hovercrafts carried civilians to safety, improvised shields absorbed blasts, and coordinated attacks held off Varkin's forces. Elias personally oversaw every move, guiding pilots and commanders through the chaos. By the end of the first wave, the colony was safe, and Varkin's fleet had been weakened. His confidence faltered. He had underestimated the humans, resourcefulness, and the strength of an alliance built on trust. Elias knew the final move required boldness. Varkin's flagship, heavily armed and shielded, remained the heart of his power. Taking it out would break his forces, but approaching it directly was suicide. "Prepare the human strike squadron," Elias commanded. "We're using a feint. I'll draw his attention while you move in from the rear. Follow my signals exactly." The plan was risky, but humans thrived on risk. Using speed, misdirection, and their unpredictable tactics, Elias lured Varkin into the central sector. His small, agile ship dodged energy blasts, weaving through debris, drawing the warlord's fire. Meanwhile, the human squadron approached the flagship from behind, weapons charged. Varkin realized too late. The flagship was caught in a trap. Zithurian batteries fired from above, human strike teams hit from behind, and Elias executed the final maneuver with flawless timing. The flagship's shields failed, energy surges overloaded its systems, and it collapsed into the void in a spectacular explosion. Varkin's remaining forces retreated in disarray. Victory belonged to the humans and Zithurians united. The galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. After the battle, the Queen summoned Elias to the palace. The halls were filled with Zithurian leaders, diplomats, and emissaries from human colonies. They had come to witness the man who had changed their perception of humanity. "You have done what many thought impossible," the Queen said, her voice carrying across the hall. "You have shown that courage, intelligence, and morality are more powerful than weapons alone. Humans are no longer underestimated. They are valued, respected, and trusted." Elias bowed slightly. "I did what any human would do. We adapted, we helped, and we fought with honor. The credit belongs to all of us, humans and Zithurians alike." The Queen inclined her head, her wings fluttering gracefully. "And yet, one human made the first choice that started it all. One act of courage saved my life and ultimately shaped the course of this war. That human is you, Elias Turner, and for that you have my eternal gratitude." She stepped closer. "I want you to have a place in our council, not as a soldier, not as a diplomat, but as an honorary representative of humanity. Your perspective, courage, and intelligence can guide the galaxy toward peace." Elias felt a mix of pride and humility. He had never sought recognition, only to act with honor and courage. And yet here he was, honored across the stars, representing humanity in a way he had never imagined. Weeks later, peace negotiations began. Humans and Zithurians sat together, planning a future of collaboration, trade, and shared knowledge. Colonies were rebuilt, civilians protected, and the galaxy slowly healed from Varkin's reign of terror. Elias walked through one of the restored human colonies, watching children play alongside Zithurian youths. The scene was peaceful, almost unbelievable after the chaos of war. He felt a quiet joy knowing that his actions and the actions of countless humans and Zithurians had created this future. The Queen approached him, her eyes reflecting both pride and warmth. "Do you remember Zithuran?" she asked softly. "I do," Elias said, smiling. "I remember the battle, the fire, and the choice I made, and I remember you," she nodded. "And I remember you, human. That choice, that single act of courage has shaped the galaxy. Never forget it." Elias looked up at the stars, countless worlds stretching into the darkness. The galaxy was vast, full of life, danger, and opportunity. Humanity had proven its strength, not through numbers, technology, or weapons, but through courage, morality, and ingenuity, and that strength would leave a lasting mark. "Humans have a lot to learn," he said quietly, "but we've proven we can rise to any challenge." "And the galaxy has learned to trust you," the Queen replied. "Your people, Elias, are capable of greatness, remember that." As Elias stood there, he realized that his journey, beginning with a single act of courage on Zithuran, had transformed not just his life, but the destiny of entire civilizations. Humans had earned their place among the stars. They had proven that bravery, intelligence, and heart could shape the future. The queen extended her hand, a gesture of trust and partnership. Elias took it, feeling the weight of history and the promise of what was to come. Together, humans and Zethurians would face the galaxy's challenges, united in purpose and mutual respect. The war was over, but the story of humanity had only just begun. The galaxy would remember the human who chose courage over fear, morality over convenience, and ingenuity over surrender. And somewhere in the stars, the faint pulse of acknowledgement continued, echoing across the void. A reminder that humanity had arrived and would leave its mark forever. Elias Turner looked up at the stars, a quiet smile on his face. The universe was vast, full of possibilities, and he knew that as long as humans remained courageous, clever, and moral, there was no challenge too great. Somewhere the Zethurian queen watched, remembering the day a single human had changed everything. And Elias knew without a doubt that humans were no longer underestimated. The galaxy was theirs to protect, to guide, and to inspire. And it all began with one act of bravery and the promise of what humanity could truly become.